Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. My guest today is Mickey Kearns, Erie County Clerk. And we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to talk so much about the clerk's office, but Mickey has been around. He's been in the state legislature. He's been city council, and now on the county level. And so he's very well versed in the political mood of the country, of the state, of the county. You know, you keep track of things. I want to welcome Mickey Kearns to the show. Let's start out by talking about the most obvious thing, and that's nationally, we hear a lot of division in this country. And it's almost like if President Trump says the sky is blue, there's going to be a protest, and they're going to say, no, the sky is green. You can't be, you can't be right. So everything that he does, literally, whether he has good intentions, whether it has a positive effect, there's protests, there's mudslinging, they call him a dictator, they call him a Nazi. It's gotten so outrageous that I'm wondering whether the people out here are kind of glazing over with the insults and the division.
Well, if you think about government and you think about politics, how important it is into our lives. And as you stated, the mood of the country, where are we at? If you look at the polling for our Congress, it's never been lower. And usually you look at elected officials, they're the community leaders of the community. And, to me, whether it's President Trump, whether it's President Biden, in the end, we are the United States of America. There's a reason why we fought a civil war. We decided that we would be stronger together, and that was proven under the great leadership of Abraham Lincoln. But we're the United States of America. There have been some, I would say, factions of different parties, and you can look at both sides, whether Democrat or Republican, left or right, that have sort of cannibalized the office. You look at someone like Chuck Schumer, who made a very courageous decision to keep the government open. And I thought to myself, wow, that was a really good decision. He's putting his constituents above maybe the left and the more progressive part of his party. And as soon as he did that, showing leadership, showing that he can work cooperatively together, the first thing they talk about is a primary against him by AOC. So now he's a little skittish. And today, what are we facing as we're on air today? We have a federal government shutdown. And really, our elected officials should be able to work together to provide basic government functions. And there are some very important functions that people are still providing, and they're not getting paid for it. Mm-hmm. It's going to start hurting families. So each side, we understand, has an agenda, and there's nothing wrong with talking about what you believe in. But I think that agenda of blocking each party, whether it's the president and, we'll say the midterm elections, what used to be something that was rare, a president being impeached, whoever is in power, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, if there is the opposite party in Congress, you're going to see impeachments. That used to be a thing of the past. It used to be very rare. So it's so highly politicized that people have sort of tuned off and turned away from politics. And it's sad. And I just want to give one example. If you think about when President Reagan was the attempted assassination of President Reagan by Hinckley, and the first person, one of the first people that come to visit him was Tip O'Neill. He came to his hospital bed, wanted to see how he was doing, and they got a lot done. We need some Tip O'Neills, and we need some Ronald Reagans, and we need some people who are going to be working. My opinion is, if people can't get along and work together, let's get rid of them. Let's get new people in.
Well, it seems to be the trend lately that, servicing the people to get good things done used to be a way to be able to earn the reputation of being a good official, okay?
Correct.
Now, it's kind of changed. The dynamic has changed, and to be opposite of your opponent, to condemn your opponent. That now, on one side certainly, on the left, seems to be the way that they deem themselves being more popular with their constituents, or more powerful, or in some way just more positive, when they can be divisive as opposed to strive for the overall good. And it's counterintuitive, but that seems to be where the left is going today. I've seen massive demonstrations about ICE. ICE stands for Immigration Customs Enforcement.
Right.
Okay? If we were to change the name, if we were to put one letter in front of the name, National, N-I-C-E, you would see people demonstrating against NICE.
Right.
It would be, I mean, I don't know how that would play with the general public. And I got to tell you, I stole that joke from Adam Carolla.
I was just going to say, boy, if President Trump heard that, he might steal it from Carolla.
But so it's the way things are going now. I just saw footage of a grammar school teacher at a protest pointing to her throat and taunting some Turning Point people going by in a car, saying bang, bang, as if to celebrate the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's outrageous.
Here's something that we didn't have in the past and we have today. It's something called the internet. Controlling information. I was on a previous segment where we talked a little bit about the media. And it used to be that there was a priority in the media for truth. And you can't control that on the internet. And, the editorials were very fair. They were separate. They were independent from the newsmakers and from the writers. And they were there to judge and give us the truth, the facts, right? The media was the only protected industry in the Constitution, the First Amendment, protecting that. Our founding fathers thought that was important enough to put it in the Constitution. So here's one thing, Phil, that you mentioned, and I'll tell you right now, we're not getting it, is the truth. We have both sides not telling the truth. And we talk a little bit about what's good. Well, what's good? God isn't good. We got to get back to why this country was formed and be real and honest with ourselves and start talking about the facts. And that's both sides. And not exaggerating things. Tell the truth and be factual. And let's talk about immigration. They've been talking about immigration, the federal government, about doing something for quite some long time, but they continue to kick the can down. Let's get a program in, let's enforce it, and let's do a good job with it. But there are people that come here legally, that follow the proper ways of doing it. They put a lot of time and effort into it. I go to these ceremonies, and I see these people, and they go to the ceremonies, the naturalization ceremonies, and they come over and we get them a passport at the clerk's office. What a proud day that you become business owners, to become part of the United States of America. So to me, I'm hopeful that in the future, maybe we're going to have to hit rock bottom before we see some changes. But until we do, there is going to be this gridlock, and we're seeing it in Washington right now, where I'm not blaming either side, but we got to start working together for the betterment of the United States of America.
Well, immigration is a thing that has been in the news constantly for generations. I mean, this is nothing new. This is back in the 1980s. I was working in Los Angeles, and I spent down in San Diego. I spent a night with the immigration people who were rounding up people coming in illegally. And at the end, and it was a Friday night, and at the end of the night, they had captured 400 people. They had detained 400 people illegally coming into the country. And I said to the supervisor at the time, I said, is that a typical? And he says, that was a good night for us. We caught approximately 10% of the people who actually came in. So that told me, and this was like back in the mid-1980s, 4,000 people came in that Friday night, and they caught 400, and they considered that to be a good day. Back then, Reagan was president, and he tried to address immigration, and he got resistance from both sides. The Republicans, the business people, wanted cheap labor.
Correct.
So they didn't want to stop immigration. The left, the politicians, wanted to bring people in as constituents for voting purposes.
Right.
And even to this day, when Biden let in between 10 and 20 million, and who knows what the correct figure is, but there were a lot of people coming in during the Biden administration. And they, whether they're legal or not, they take residence in a state, and they are counted in the census as people. They don't have to be legal, they just have to be there, and they're counted, and that goes to congressional support. So you get more congressional seats on your side if you're in a blue state and you have a lot of illegal people in residence. So it's a complicated thing, but to an extent both sides benefit from it, but the country doesn't benefit. Legal immigration, my grandparents came over from Sicily. They basically had to go through questionnaires and conditions. They had to prove that they were healthy, that they had enough money to survive on, they weren't going to sponge off of the government, that they had sponsors in this country. That's the legal process. And it's not simple, but it's the proper way to do things. Coming in illegally, that bypasses everything. You don't know whether they have COVID. You don't know whether they're criminal. You don't know whether they're going to be on welfare immediately. It needs to be addressed, and it seems like it is being addressed, and it makes people angry.
It makes people angry because there are unintended consequences. We talked a little bit about it, as county clerk, we're the business office of Erie County, and there's only so many resources. And I know there's many seniors that I talk to, they can't afford the property taxes in Erie County. Maybe they were a 2-household income, now they're down to 1. Maybe the husband was a veteran, they received some type of assessment, relief. But when you bring more people in and and they're tugging on those services, it could create some issues. And there's a strain. It puts a strain. And, we're seeing it now with whether it's law enforcement. A lot of the people that came in were proven to be criminal. And, the federal government said, look, you can self-deport and come back. But I guess my point is, why aren't our elected officials doing the big stuff? Mm-hmm. We're the greatest country in the world. And we have to maintain our borders. And I think everybody agrees with that. It's funny, in President Trump's first administration, if you looked at President Trump and then President Obama, and you looked at President Clinton, you added up all the Democrats, you would say, well, I know who deported the most people. And if you put it on a test, in a high school test, it would be a trick question. You would say, it has to be President Trump. No, it wasn't. They used to call President Obama deporter-in-chief. Yeah. He deported more people,
almost 3 million,
more illegals than any other president. So
nobody complained.
And there were
no protests.
And he was building a wall. They don't talk about the wall he was going to build. So, this is where politics happens. The media has sort of lost their fairness, their objectivity. And that's the point I'm saying, where we got to get back to having a fair media in this country, where both sides, look, I face it every day as an elected official. It could be just the omission of one sentence, of one fact.
Very easy.
Our office has been audited, and reviewed 6 or 7 times. Mm-hmm. Now, am I very grateful that we were able to be audited the first time and we were able to find someone who was breaching the public trust? Yes. And I was part of that solution. But then it gets political. Right. And it's impugning people's reputation. So, Phil, this is the problem we're having is, if we can't work together as a team, other countries are going to see that. We're facing countries like China, who are building them, they're building their allies, they're building up their technology. They are getting pretty, bold of coming after the United States. The rare earth minerals is a huge issue. So we're very lucky. We should be concentrating on the important stuff. And like I said, when people come in illegally, it puts a strain on this country.
Well, division is a winning strategy today, it seems. And that's where politicians are going. Let's divide and let's create conflict. And doing that, we can win our side of an argument. It's not, can we do the best for everybody? Because that's kind of bland. And that, okay, we'll all get along, but that doesn't, differentiate me from my opponent. It's complicated. We're out of time for this segment. When we come back, I'm going to show you a video that, for the grace of God, I wouldn't be here. You'll see this video. I wouldn't be here if things had changed just a little bit. We'll see you right after the break. Welcome back to The Big Picture. My guest is Mickey Kearns. We talked about division, we talked about politics, we talked about immigration in the first segment. I'm going to show you a video now. We're going to roll this video, and what it is back in the 1990s, I was in Los Angeles as a news photographer, and I was driving a van, a news van, and I was at the end of a day going back to the station, and I was sitting at an intersection, and the light changed to green, and I creeped into the intersection a little bit, and I saw headlights coming towards me and in the same lane, and I thought maybe the guy was going to jump the light and turn left in front of me, so I just stayed there in the intersection. Well, the truck never changed direction. It came right into the news van. It was a shock. I got out, I was kind of in shock, and I started taking some pictures, and here's what I saw. The driver of the mini pickup truck who went straight into me, he was actually asleep at the wheel. He dozed off after he hit me. The ambulance came, the fire department, they got him out. They put him on the curb. They started asking him questions. He was basically out of it, didn't know his own name. And they made some wisecracks about the whole thing. I took pictures of the back of his truck. All it was beer bottles and beer cans and liquor. It turned out that this was an illegal alien who, after this accident, disappeared. There were no consequences whatsoever. He just was gone. And if I had not been in that news van, if I had been on a motorcycle or, God forbid, walking across the street, he would have killed me. I would not be here right now. And that tells you that this issue of immigration that's uncontrolled and people who are here irresponsible and not accountable, that costs lives. It's a real situation that can't be ignored.
Phil, it's funny because when we're on the roads and we're drivers, as you know, as part of my position, I manage the auto bureaus, the DMVs, and one of the issues we have is people driving without insurance, lapse insurance. And when you're out there, we tell our young drivers, our permit drivers, they have to come in and take a permit test. They have to study. They take a 5-hour course. We always emphasize to them the importance, the responsibility of driving. I go to high schools. I talk to young people. We partner with AAA of Western New York. That can happen to anyone. Someone who's driving without insurance, who may be driving under the influence, and now you have to add with the decriminalization of drugs. Many times people think, and young people, we have to tell them, if you're driving high, you're under the influence. And I know that Sheriff Garcia is someone who is out there protecting our roads and our local law enforcement, our police officers in our different municipalities. But if you're driving high and you get pulled over, you're going to get some serious fines. You're going to get a revocation of your license. You're going to not be driving for a year. So my point is that, someone doesn't drive up and say, oh, there's a Democrat, I'm going to hit that car. There's a Republican. No, These things can happen to anyone, these accidents, and we're thankful that you're still here. Thank God that you survived that. But, you know, we have to prevent things. And preventing things is people being prepared, being properly trained to drive, making sure that they have the authority to be on the road. And it just is something that, once again, that accident happens. I see it all the time. All of those accidents, someone's got to pay for that. Someone's got to pay for the repairs. New York State has some of the highest insurance rates in the country when it comes to car insurance rates, and I always hear about it. Well, it's because of a lot of accidents. There's a lot of litigation, and
but there's a lot of bureaucracy in New
Yep.
York as well. When New York mandates that we have insurance, it creates a monopoly almost, you know, because insurance companies, there's only a limited number of them that
Right.
operate in New York State, and they have no competition other than other insurance companies that are basically in the same boat. You have to deal with them as the public. If I were to tell you I'm selling apples and nobody else in the state can sell apples, I'm going to charge you, if you want an apple, you got to pay my price.
Right.
Okay? That's a monopoly, and that's not what the country is founded on, which is basically free enterprise. And that leads me to switch gears a little bit, no pun intended. Right. Let's go to the state and how the state is performing. You know, there was a study by the Business Council of New York put out a study about a year ago. And that study showed that New York State has lost, in the last 3 years, close to $1 billion to other states.
Yep.
In property, in revenue, and in taxes, because people are moving away. Now we have a socialist, a self-avowed socialist, about to become mayor of New York City. I don't know how
I thought you almost said Mayor of Buffalo. Sorry.
Well, that too, and he's just not self-avowed. He basically just follows. I'm not even going to get into that, but Buffalo as a whole, more other subject, and I don't have a lot of optimism, shall we say. The way things are going in the state, in New York City, in Buffalo, it seems like the bureaucracy is winning. And I don't think the people like that. And their only alternative is to pick up, you know, relocate their family, leave all their, you know, treasured memories behind and go someplace else.
You know, Phil, you know, as the county clerk, as I stated, you know, the registrar's division, you know, there's been no other time in my lifetime where I've seen record housing prices. There's low inventory, lots of competition, high people putting their houses up, and people are, I think, they're voting with their feet. They know that it's tough at the voting booth to beat some of these people. So you know what they're saying? I'm going to move to Florida. I talked to so many of my friends in their mid-50s, and you know, they had a house. They bought it at a reasonable price. Maybe they bought it off a senior citizen. They put some money in it. Their kids are grown. And they're like, I can double my money, move to Florida. There's no state tax. Or I can go to North Carolina. Exactly. Better weather. I don't have to deal up with the political climate. And that's what we're seeing. In New York State, I'll tell you right now, you know, they're doubling down on higher electricity bills when they're going to all mandatory electric services in New York State. You know, you talk about insurance rates. Phil, at some point in time, people say, you know, New York State's a beautiful state. Believe me. I've been throughout all of New York State. It's a beautiful state. I love New York State. But at some point in time, people are saying, I'm voting with my feet. I'm getting up. And, you know, people who have institutional knowledges, businesses, they're not even selling their businesses. They're just packing up. They're closing the door down. And you know who's left? The people who can't afford to stay. So these people have been overtaxed. Like, we'll use Erie County. Erie County, if you get behind on your taxes, they charge you 18%. You talked about the budget, and there's a phantom number in there. There's a delinquency in there of about $17.5, $18 million. You know, they're never going to collect on that. There's over $50 million in receivables. Why is that? Why aren't we interested in this stuff? Why aren't our elected officials making these things a priority? So people are voting with their feet, and they're saying sayonara to New York State. Well, and eventually, you're going to feel it.
New York State, traditionally and for forever, has been the #1 state in the country for highest taxes. I mean, that's not a good thing to be the #1.
It's so funny you should say that. I looked at it and said, we're about 6 now. It's nothing to be proud
The
of.
overall tax burden.
It's about 6. I just read this stat. I just read this stat, so I want to. I'm not looking to correct you, but because I thought they were #1 too, but they just #6. They were just, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and I didn't know we would be talking about it, but they were #6. But Phil, you mentioned Buffalo. We mentioned Buffalo. You know, Mayor Brown. You know, he maintained a tax rate for years, but at some point in time, like, what are we going to do? We can't maintain all these things, whether it's county government, city government, state government, federal government. At some point in time, we're going to be we're going to make the proactive decisions to correct our government, to help our people, or we're going to be in these deficit borrowing situations, and we're not going to be able to control that.
You know, we've got about a minute left. I have talked about this over and over again. There's things that the government does for people that was never intended, and the bigger government gets, the more it spends, the more it has to take from people, because government doesn't have any money. Government only takes money from the people. That's where it gets the money. It doesn't manufacture anything. It doesn't do anything. It basically survives on what it can take from the citizens. And the bigger government is, the more they take. And government has grown over the years. And I did a show, and I want to do a little self-promotion here. Go to YouTube, to WBBZ-TV, The Big Picture Prime. And then there's a program about the Fed, the Federal Reserve. Go to YouTube and see that program. It is the most frustrating, most informative program I've ever done. And I highly recommend that you see what the Federal Reserve is and how it finances government. And that's why we're $37 trillion in debt.
Scary.
It's very scary, and the trend has to be reversed. It can't continue the way it's going. Otherwise, horrible things will happen. You know, internationally, we will no longer be the power that we are. Anyway, we're out of time for this big picture. This always happens to me. We run out of time. I hope that you've found this interesting. I want to thank you for watching The Big Picture, and I want to thank you for watching WBBZ-TV. We're your local station, and we really appreciate it. We will see you next time on The Big Picture.